Finally, Screen Chat has come back to riotradio.ca. Right, guys, that was my best rock impression on the promo. And as you guys could tell from my shirt, from my pops, from the intro, we're talking all about the one and only Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson today, as his brand new movie, The Smashing Machine, has been released. As you guys know, Screen Chat is your show all about the latest Marvel movies, DC Comics, Star Wars adaptations, and much, much more. And today we're talking about the one and only, the final boss, the Brahma Bull, the most electrifying man in all of entertainment, The Rock. I'm very excited for this episode, as this was one of my most anticipated, personally. I feel like I say that before every show that I do, but this one especially, I was really looking forward to because, like I said, we have the brand new movie, The Smashing Machine. But before we talk about The Smashing Machine, I do need to talk about the man of the hour, The Rock. Now, he's obviously one of my favorite, I guess, actors, entertainers, athletes, however you want to word him, whatever category he goes into, he always gets a mention from me. And I feel like, if you watched Riot Rumble with myself and Dan, then you know the Rock fandom from there. If you've seen a couple episodes of Screen Chat where I have mentioned him before, you guys know the fandom as well. And just in my personal life, I'm a big wrestling fan. This is a shirt passed down from my dad as well. So, big Rock fans in my family. So, starting off, just overall, like I mentioned, he's just a WWE legend. For me, for as long as I could remember, I always watched The Rock. As we see here, this is one back from the 90s when he was hoisting up the belt. And then even too, that's on the right. I think I was in maybe third grade when that happened. When he came back, he beat CM Punk for the title, and he fought John Cena at WrestleMania. And The Rock has just done so much for sports entertainment that for me, you can't really talk about the WWE without mentioning The Rock. I feel like for what he did in the 90s, especially during the WWE versus WCW era, he was definitely one of the more prominent figures. Obviously, he does come from the Anoa'i family dynasty of wrestling, which is just, we'll get to the bloodline later. I could talk about the bloodline for the whole show if I could, but we're going to skip on that for today. And just, overall, man, some of my favorite memories watching wrestling, playing the wrestling video games as a kid, doing the, the people's elbow, throwing off the elbow pad, dropping the elbow, doing the rock bottom as well. I just love The Rock, and as a massive wrestling fan, I was really excited for this upcoming movie. And before we even talk about The Smashing Machine, The Rock just has, to me, some of my favorite movies from a kid, and some of the best movies that I ever watched growing up. I would say, when we look at different movies such as The Scorpion King and San Andreas, The Tooth Fairy, Planet 51, Moana's up there too, Jumanji, The Gridiron Gang. He has a lot of, to me, really good movies, really movies that are made for the family audience, so families could take their kids and go watch it. He has some misses in there, such as I'm pretty sure Doom. We're not going to discuss Doom with Carl Urban, but you should check out that movie poster. That's a funny one. The Mummy, I'm not a massive fan of The Mummy, honestly, but hey man, it has The Rock, so it can't be that bad. And I feel I'm getting a dirty look behind the scene. I mean, The Rock's take on it. Yeah, I like Brandon Fraser. I'll leave it at that. And I think also another one, Journey to the Center of the Earth. That was a good movie with The Rock. I remember watching that on YTV back in the day, so that was pretty solid as well. Eldon's Journey 2, the second one. Yeah, see, Eldon didn't believe me, but the second one that not a lot of general people remember, I remember the second one just because of The Rock. So yeah, great for me. Again, some of my favorite films from back then. And finally, just more closer to today, just his fitness influence. This guy is always posting his workouts in the gym, doing his vlogs, and he has just one of my favorite quotes of all time, which is "one day or day one." And that just really sticks with me because that's just such an inspiring quote for me. So yeah, overall, I could geek out about The Rock for the whole episode. I've pretty much done that thus far, but we do got to move on to his latest movie, the blockbuster that is The Smashing Machine. Now, this is the brand new movie, the brand new biopic all about MMA legend Mark Kerr, starring Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson and Emily Blunt as the two main characters. And we do have a lot to talk about from this film. So let's just not dwell upon it. Let's just jump straight into it. So first off, similar to past movie reviews that we have done on the show, I'm going to break down certain cast performances as I kind of break down just the movie review as a whole and just give my, opinions on each things in between that. So up first, the man of the hour, Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson. He plays Mark Kerr in this movie. And First off, as we're going to see here, he looks so different than his normal look in this. Throwback to the 90s with his hair. He looks so jacked as well. And you could definitely tell that he put a lot of work in on his body, off the scenes, or behind the scenes, I should say, to really nail this look. Now, we're going to hear this statement a lot today, but I thought The Rock was phenomenal as Mark Kerr. Really and truly, this is a story where it's not a happy story. It's a sad story that they tell. We're going to get more into it, but it takes place between 1997, which was a great year, and the year 2000. And overall, just for a biopic, I love biopics. I always like to hold the main character to a high standard, or I guess the main actor, I should say. And with that being said, I thought The Rock was just as good as you can be. We're going to get more into it later on, but definitely The Rock as Mark Kerr. This was a hit. For me, this was like a Mount Rushmore role for The Rock. I don't think if you at home or you online, if you thought that The Rock wasn't a good actor, despite, being in like the Fast and the Furious movie, San Andreas, The Scorpion King, all the ones that we mentioned before, there's no way you could deny his acting prowess after watching this movie. It was really good. Like I said, we're going to jump more into that in a bit, but just sticking to him, he looked great. He played that role really well, and he was able to do something that I feel like a lot of roles of his didn't do, and that was be humble, have that humility. When The Rock does movies, it's no secret that he's always winning. He's always the big good guy. And this movie, we see him fall down more than we actually see him get up. So we're going to dive more into that later on. But up next, we have Emily Blunt, who played Dawn Staples, Mark Kerr's girlfriend. And I'm going to be real, I was a fan of Emily Blunt before this. This is an all-time performance. I'm going to be so real. She was arguably the best part of this movie. I think when you look at roles that different actresses have done in movies, I think this one is right up there for, I guess, transcending the kind of the game, if you will. When you see other biopics such as, you got 42 with Jackie Robinson. You also see The Social Network with based on Mark Zuckerberg. There's a lot of biopics that are mainly about men that don't really have necessarily the biggest female impact in the story. Even the Steve Jobs biopics, I didn't really think they were that great. But when you look at this movie, as much as it's called The Smashing Machine, this could have easily been called the Mark Kerr and Dawn Staples story. And I think that just says a lot about Emily Blunt. I would say that as somebody that likes to hold, in a positive way, I hold actresses to the same standards as actors, because I don't think there should be one over the other. This was as good as any performance you're going to see from an actress, especially this year in 2025. And I think she should win the Oscar for that. We'll get more into that later on, but she was amazing. I didn't get a chance to meet her at TIFF, but I did attend TIFF, and I was relatively close to her, and I was like, oh shoot, that's so cool that her and John Krasinski are here too. But yeah, just phenomenal performance. Like I said, we're going to dive more into it when I break down the plot, but she was amazing. Now, coming up next, we have a funny take, not because it's not funny for, I guess, life, funny for me, but I wasn't too familiar with either Ryan Bader or Mark Coleman, but both Ryan Bader, he played Mark Coleman, and Bader is actually a UFC fighter. Well, I should say mixed martial artist is what I should say, just to be politically correct. I'm not too familiar with him, but I was doing research and I found out that he is also a fighter. So I thought that was sick. He was so good in the role as Mark Coleman, and I just got a nice photo of them side by side here at one of the red carpets. Honestly, he did Mark Coleman justice. Mark Coleman is a legend, a pioneer of the game. And I would say on face value, Mark Coleman is him. But seeing this movie, I now probably like Mark Coleman, like the friend, the trainer, the motivator, more than I ever will Mark Coleman, the fighter, because Ryan Bader's performance was so good. He was so uplifting. He was so consistent. I think it's funny how, in a good way, how different they look in real life, because obviously The Rock got a lot of prosthetics, and in comparison to Bader and Coleman, even if you look at photos of Coleman back in the day, they don't really look that alike. However, I did not really care that much about that. I thought Bader delivered. I'm sure he's delivered in the octagon before, but this was another smashing performance from in this movie, and you're going to hear that a lot about these three specifically. I would say that to me, The Rock was definitely like the best. But these supporting actors and roles in this film were just top tier. I thought Ryan Bader did one hell of a job, especially because, like, I guess maybe he has an acting background. Again, I wasn't really too familiar with Ryan Bader. Apparently his nickname is Darth Bader. That's what Carson was telling me beforehand. So that's really cool as well. But now that I know that Bader is who he is, I definitely could tell that reflects in his performance. He was very accurate. He was very, like, on the nose, comfortable, and it kind of did the MMA world justice by having him in there. Now, moving on to someone who I had to give a special shout out to because he does play a huge role in the start and the end of the movie is Alexander Usyk, who I did not know was in this film. I loved it that he was there. And Usyk, he plays Igor Vushchanin. You know what? I'm trying my best to say that. Vushchanin. Yeah. So Vushchanin, played by Alexander Usyk on the right there. One of the best boxers of all time, steps in front of the camera and plays a mixed martial artist. I thought it was really cool. He had a translator as well, which is probably accurate to back in the day. So his scenes were really nice because they were like communicating through expressions, and then the translator was doing it through the words, and it was really cool. Alexander Usyk, whether you're a big fan of him in real life or not, he delivered. I will say Alexander Usyk, as like an English sports fan, like he's kind of like the Grim Reaper because he did defeat Anthony Joshua, and that took a toll on me, I will say. But with all jokes aside, he was really good in this little supporting-ish role, if we could even call it that. And like I mentioned too, we're gonna spin back on him because his character, I'm gonna keep calling him characters by mistake. The person he played a huge role in the very start and the very end of this movie. And now moving on to the final cast performance, I did want to mention, shout out Carson, we had the one and only Bas Rutten. Now, I didn't know who was going to play Bas. I was like, didn't know if he was going to be accurate to how he moved, who was going to play him, So they just got the man himself. Word to Carson, I'm going to quote him on this. They got 60-year-old Bas Rutten to play 40-year-old Bas Rutten. With my dialect, I'm going to try my best to say that name. But with that being said, I can't even say he was good or bad. He was himself. He was amazing. He was one of my favorite parts of the movie. And without even judging it, you knew it was accurate. He was playing the more coaching role of this movie, and we saw him, nurture Mark Kerr at different points. He was also like getting him locked in, X, Y, and Z cornerman activity. So I can't even say that this was good. It was just, Bas Rutten. It was amazing. It felt so authentic that it didn't even feel like I was watching a film. That's how I felt whenever he was on the screen. He was amazing, and I really enjoyed his, again, more supporting role to this film. Didn't realize that he was playing himself in it, so that was also a nice surprise. And yeah, it was really good. So now that we got some of the cast members out of the way, let's dive into the movie portion review of this. I think there's definitely a lot to talk about. So starting off, Mark Kerr takes place between 1997 and 2000, and he starts off the movie undefeated. He is 8-0 to start off this film and has one of the better opening scenes I think I've seen. He's taking place at this, I guess he's fighting at this more unknown MMA thing that's only had 14 events, as they say. I can't cuss, but The Rock said himself in it. Can't you believe they've only had 14 effing things of this thing? And it was so funny because that thing in question was the UFC. But starts off, he has, I think, 2 fights to start off in the opening monologue. And then he, hoists up the title. It was nice. It was pretty cool. And this shot specifically, I just love. I love the lighting. I love that you see The Rock smiling. Got the belt up there. It's really cool. And yeah, it was a nice start to it. But as all good things come to an end, this is essentially what the start of this movie was. So as The Rock is getting prepared to take on Igor Vushchanin, I'm going to butcher that, so I'm just going to call him Igor. But yeah, so Igor and The Rock, or Mark Kerr, I should say, have a really nice fight. But Igor ends up hitting Mark Kerr with some illegal knees to the head, which weren't called. So Mark Kerr loses the fight to start. And he can't accept it. They kept saying to him before the fight, what are you gonna do? We'll spin to this after. We'll get to that when that kind of comes up. But going back now to the locker room photo of Igor and Mark Kerr, it was really cool to see them interact afterwards. Like I mentioned before, I know it's the same photo, but pulling up that photo again if we can, just of Igor and his team back there. They took a nice photo after the match. They both had bumps and bruises, and ultimately the decision was overturned to a no contest, so that was good. But it just didn't do enough, because Mark just couldn't really accept it, and he kind of went off the deep end. Ends up in the hospital. He was just doing drugs, drinking, and he just couldn't accept the defeat. And like, we see him crying in the hospital bed. He puts the sheet over his eyes, which we'll see in a moment. And it was emotional. Don Staples had to call up Mark Coleman to fly out and come consult him and essentially tell him, you got to lock in. And what was really cool about the scene is that, as a huge fan of The Rock, you don't really see The Rock ever like that. Like, he's always winning. He's always winning the matches, always winning the fights in the movies. Maui, I should say, in Moana. Like, when do you see The Rock be this vulnerable and just be down and out for the count? And it was, it was actually pretty inspiring, I will say. To see somebody larger than life, to me at least, be in that state, even though he was playing a role, it was hitting. So I really enjoyed this scene. This was a really good performance, a really good scene, I should say. And it was really good, retelling of the story, because I obviously wasn't in the hospital room when this was happening, but I'm sure Mark Kerr himself loved this scene. Well, maybe not loved the memory of it. However, one of the better scenes in the film. So I can only imagine the praise it got from the man himself. Now, moving on. After this, Mark Kerr decides to lock in. He decides to get in shape, and he decides to go to training camp under Boss. And it was really cool to see him get back in shape. He was in the gym, in the gym. He was training, doing sparring, just lifting weights, and he was just building. Like, he was so broad, so massive. And it was really good to see him, for lack of a better word, just lock in and get back. I think this story was very telling on how you could go from zero to hero. The one context that I think this story was missing, which I'll elaborate on before, is who Mark Kerr was before the film. It takes place between 97 and 2000, like I mentioned. You don't really know who he is before, and I think I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing, but I will say maybe a little bit more context on that could have been cooler, so then this would have hit more. This hit for me because I love The Rock. But if you don't necessarily know a lot about Mark Kerr, I should say, and you're not really a huge fan of The Rock, seeing this seeing this redemption arc might not have hit as much for you as it did for me. But moving on though, it was really cool because he was able to get back in shape. But on the contrary, I would say that him and Don were just always fighting and jarring over the lifestyle choices that they were making. But what was nice is that Kerr was then set to return to the ring at the Pride Grand Prix 2000. And it was a really cool scene here in the press conference where he returned to Japan. He couldn't make his last fight because he was in the hospital. He was in rehab. So then it was nice to see this scene where he returned to Japan. He apologized to the fans and said he's going to give it his all and he's going to be back. It was truly inspiring. And I think this really set that up because he was then, like I said, he announced that he was going to be fighting at this event, which would see the winner be awarded $200,000. And in his first match, he actually won. He took on Enson Inoue, and in that match he was able to get the victory, which was nice. Now, at this point in the movie, we're kind of seeing the upward trend of Mark Kerr. I would say that you were thinking, like, if you hadn't seen this film, or you didn't know the story is what I should say, you're thinking, wow, man, he's going to go on, he's going to win this thing. He's going up, everything's going well with Don, what could go wrong next? And I think that's where things do go wrong. Back in America now, both Mark Coleman and Bas Rutten suggest to Mark Kerr that he keeps Don Staples at home. Shout out Don Staley, but leaves Don at home because she's been a distraction. And from there, they have another fight. But this fight was worse than any fight that we saw in the movie. They ended up just screaming at each other. Don ended up throwing like a bowl down the stairs. I think we have a photo of them coming up just in more like discuss with each other. But yeah, they had a fight. And unfortunately, this scene, for what it was in the movie, it was unfortunately one of the best scenes because of and I say unfortunately because of what happened. So after they have a big fight, we see a really like graphic moment where Dawn attempts to take her own life. But then by the grace of God, if this is like, I'm assuming this is accurate to what actually happened. Again, I highly doubt this would be in the movie if Mark Kerr himself didn't approve it. By the grace of God, Mark Kerr is able to jump and essentially tackle her down, and so she did not shoot herself. And then he kind of had to give her like a bear hug to say, yo, it's going to be okay. It's going to be okay. And it was really emotional, man. I think I started tearing up at that scene because throughout the movie, Emily Blunt's like portrayal of Dawn, just to make sure I get it right again, Dawn Staples, was so good. And like throughout the film, she was like trying to do, like she was doing too much, but she was trying, you know, she was making his protein shakes, but she was doing it wrong. She was like, I guess, arriving to training a little bit late. She was pulling up right before his fights instead of like, I guess, way earlier. She wasn't sitting down in her seat at the right time. It's like, if we just pull up, if we can, just that photo of Emily Blunt again from earlier, it's like her portrayal was so good, and I just feel like throughout the film it was like her chasing the validation. Thank you guys for that. Was her just chasing the validation, and it just wasn't really there. And I think in that moment what Mark Kerr, played by The Rock, was displaying was like, oh no, I can't do this without you. Even though I've said throughout the movie that you do nothing and that you're terrible for my life and your lifestyle affects me, in that moment he like made sure that he saved her. And then after that she got sent into like, I guess, rehab, like she went into care. And I just think Mark, like The Rock's adaptation of The Rock, in this like frame, watching her drive off was just I don't know if I could say the word guilty, but was just so taken aback and so shook. And it really hit close to home. But I just, yeah, man, it was such a cool scene. Again, like if this was not a real story, this would be like one of my favorite scenes, I think, in like modern movie history, honestly. But because this is a retelling of that actual event, it does, like, it feels weird saying that about that specific scene, but that just shows how good both The Rock and Emily Blunt were in this film. So moving on now, we're going to the big grand finale. So after a great training camp, it's been great working out. Boss is really happy with Mark Kerr. It's time to head back to Japan. And in Japan, it was time for Kerr to take on Kiyosaki Fujita. And unfortunately, in that match, a distracted Mark Kerr could not get the win. And as he's fighting, he has a nice start to the bout. And then as the bout continues, Mark's own mind got the better of him. We saw the flashbacks of Dawn. We saw the flashbacks of the hospital, the training camp. And unfortunately, every shot that he was taking was just reminding him of that. And unfortunately, Mark Kerr fell in the second round to Fujita. And yeah, it was a sad ending to his dream of trying to win the tournament. This is where I would say, just leaving this one up for a bit, this scene specifically is where in any of his movies, The Rock, to me, felt the most human. He didn't win the fight. He didn't have some crazy comeback. He just ultimately lost. And it's not like there was a reason. He just simply lost the fight. Obviously, there was a lot of stuff on his mind, but unfortunately, it was too much. Now, what was really cool, though, is that Mark Kerr did say to Mark Coleman that he must have done a number on him because Fujita, unfortunately, also bowed out of the competition. I guess maybe he was, hitting The Rock a bit too hard, which was pretty funny. But ultimately, in the end, we would see Mark Coleman advance to the finals. And this was so cool because I wasn't familiar with this. Like Carson and I, we were talking about this the other day. I hadn't actually watched the Pride Championships. So as you see here, Mark Coleman would actually get the better of Igor Vushchanin by TKO, and he would be winning the Pride 2000 Grand Prix. We'll have a photo of it here because I unfortunately could not find a photo of it from the film. So we just have the real image here coming up of the actual Mark Coleman holding up the title and the trophy, signed by him as well. Sorry guys, the movie's new. This was the best I could do, but yeah, as you see here though, just really prefacing it, right? Does that look like Ryan Bader? By no means, not at all, but it was all good. So yeah, so Mark Coleman in the end is the one who gets the victory. It was great. I was, I didn't know how this was going to play out, so I was really happy that the movie got somewhat of a happy ending. And this leads me to the final scene we saw of both Bader and Dwayne Johnson as their respective marks, because we had Mark Coleman and Mark Kerr sharing a nice moment in the dressing room. Again, movie's new, so I used a real photo of them for this again. And yeah, it was just a nice moment because you just saw The Rock accept the defeat. And again, it's something that The Rock doesn't usually portray, which is why it was so cool to me and it really hit home. Before panning to the real life Mark Kerr, who was showcased shopping at a shopping center. So overall, The Smashing Machine, that is my cast review and plot review all in one. What I liked throughout the whole thing was just honestly just a really good retelling of a dramatic event. And I think that when you look at biopics, they don't really hit this hard in sports unless there's, I guess, maybe outside reasonings. But in terms of just pure athlete struggle, this one is up there for me. Like I mentioned before, the only thing I would say that I wish we got more of was, I guess, Mark Kerr before 1997. Then again, if you're a fan of MMA, you probably already know who Mark Kerr is going into this. I would say, as somebody that's a newer MMA fan, I was really only into the UFC heavy like that from 2021 onwards and today. I still really enjoyed it. I didn't necessarily know if I wanted to go into the movie being an expert on Mark Kerr, because if that was the case, then this movie might not have hit as hard as it did for me. If you knew the ending, if you knew what was going to happen in the fights, then maybe you're just there for the portrayal. For me, I was there for both the portrayal and the story. That's why not knowing that much about Kerr really did a lot for me. So back to the man himself, The Rock. What does this movie do for him? And I think this movie, if any film that I mentioned today or the ones I missed didn't establish him as an actual actor, I think this one finally does. Carson, Dan, and myself, we had this conversation a few days ago, and he's had a lot of films. We're jumping the gun here. I'll dive into that soon. We could take it down if that's all right. But I just think that with this movie, him portraying Kerr was just so good. And I think for some, it'll be his best role ever. And I say that because he's had a lot of roles that might not have been taken as seriously. But this one, for me, is definitely a Mount Rushmore role. I would say without a shadow of a doubt, this one is just as good as any live action stunt that he's done, as well as Maui. I'm going to be blunt here, right? Playing Maui and the way he did it was just so good to me, especially as a big Disney guy. We'll take this down for now because we're coming to that eventually. But damn it, we spoiled what I had in store, but that's fine. So with that being said, let me just move on to the next bit. So overall, The Smashing Machine, I'm gonna give it a solid 3.5 ground pounds out of 5. It was really solid. I think if you enjoy MMA, this is a movie you definitely should watch. If you're a fan of Emily Blunt especially, go watch this movie. I can't recall off the top of my head all of the work that she's done, but I could only imagine this is close to the top for that. Shout out to Boss Rutten as well. He's really good in the film. And yeah, I think that this film is definitely a must-see for any sports fan, any movie lover, and any biopic fan. So because we were jumping the gun, let's just go for it. So The Rock, what's next for him? Well, we had it up earlier. We know that he is going to be doing a film with Martin Scorsese alongside Leonardo DiCaprio. Now, this is going to be a really good movie. I think The Rock, if I'm not mistaken, from what I've heard, is playing a Hawaiian mob boss. So I'm really excited for that. I'm a huge fan of DiCaprio as well. If you watched any episode of Screenshot where we discuss favorite movies of all time, then Inception is legit a top 3 favorite film of mine ever. I love The Quick and the Dead. I love Romeo and Juliet. DiCaprio is in a lot of my favorite films as well. So these guys merging, this is it's like the Mega Powers, This is like watching a Screenshot episode and you have myself and Eldon at the desk. It's just amazing, right? So that's really cool. As well as a live action adaptation of Moana. So if you thought this guy couldn't get any more kid-friendly, he is now just being Maui himself. It is so cool. When I saw this for the first time, I was like, hey, Eldon, is this me? But unfortunately, it is not me. It is The Rock. And I love that he still got the shades on. And you know what? His hair, see, guys, we know why people say that I look like Maui is because look at live action Maui, and let's pretend I still have my clean shaven. You can't tell me that's not the same person. Just only my arms are not like, like I don't really have his arms or the tattoos. So we'll just kind of let that one be. But I'm very excited for this movie. I was a big fan of both the Moana 1 and 2. I saw part 2 in the theaters. It was great. And now we're going to get a live action one where maybe he really is going to say to people, please acknowledge me. So that's going to be great. And I think just, going off of like other movies that have been rumored / like confirmed, we know he's going to do a movie called The Chicken Man. Don't know much about that. It's been rumored that he's also going to be doing San Andreas 2, which would be really cool. If that is true, like San Andreas is one of my favorite films by The Rock. So I would love that. And so before we wrap it up though, it would not be a segment about The Rock without mentioning his return, because when is the final boss coming back to the WWE? The People's Champ has the People's Champ title, the final boss, like the music, like where is he? I feel like I'm doing Riot Rumble again, where Dan and I just start off every episode with, it's been X amount of days since we've seen the final boss. And it's been too long. Unfortunately, you Cody crybabies out there stopped us from getting The Rock versus Roman Reigns at Oh, sorry, guys. That's the wrong script. I can't go on another tangent about that. I have done that in the past. So we're going to stick to just The Rock himself here. But yeah, I would say that The Rock has one more, WWE run in him. Unfortunately, this was supposed to be it, and then the fans kind of turned on him, and then they realized, oh shoot, we probably should have just let The Rock fight Roman. But in his last stint, he looked amazing. He tag teamed with Roman Reigns to take on Cody Rhodes and Seth Rollins. It was a really good match. And then on WrestleMania Night 2, he was heavily involved. And then I didn't get a photo of it, but he hoisted up Cody Rhodes' title on his shoulder, which looked nice as well. So I really want The Rock to come back. I did get a chance to see him in person, both at TIFF and at the Elimination Chamber this year, where he did also make an appearance helping John Cena turn heel. It was The Rock, Travis Scott, and John Cena beating up Cody Rhodes. I should have got a photo of that. But while we're on the topic, we got to talk about the Bloodline very quickly. I need to see The Rock and Roman Reigns one more time. I acknowledge you, my tribal chief. I need to see The Rock and Roman Reigns one more time. Like, this is box office cinema right here in the wrestling world. And I think that having these two on camera for the couple months that we did, seeing these shots, seeing the titles, seeing the fireworks, we need to make it happen again. And I really hope we're able to get that at some point. But I think that's going to do it for us today. I just really enjoyed talking about The Rock. And I feel like, for me as a big movie lover, big wrestling fan, I'm just happy to do this episode. And I think, for me, it means a lot because when I look at this photo with the Just Bring It, like that's who The Rock was when I was a kid. Like when he came back, he was calling his fans Team Bring It. He was put in, I can't say what he said because he would cuss, but he would cut that promo and like he had the championship. It was amazing. That's why I have a couple Funko Pops of him as well. But it's just, he is somebody that in my life of liking pop culture, whether it's like literally wrestling or DC, because he also played Black Adam, which I loved. That's why I have a couple pops, right? Like, he is somebody that I will always be a fan of. And I just hope one day we could all collectively smell what The Rock is cooking. Thank you guys so much for tuning in to Screen Chat. Thank you to my techs behind the scenes today. I love the support. Thank you guys so much for always tuning in and letting me know how I do on these episodes. Be sure to follow me on social media at Justin on the Air, separated by underscores. Make sure you acknowledge your final boss and go watch The Smashing Machine. And don't forget to enjoy, because it is now getting a little chilly, like Cold Lap Palma. It's not too hot out there no more. So if you're gonna enjoy your FNF Fridays, please be Chili Lat Palma and hit the celebration one time for me. But thank you guys so much. Don't forget you can follow us on social media at DCSA Media Hub. I've been Justin, and this has been Screen Chat live from the Media Hub on RiotRadio.ca.